This is the debate of love and death. The long exchange between Savitri and the god of death, who has carried away the soul of her husband Shraddhavan. And as I read now, this is death who is speaking. He has listened, he has heard what Savitri has to say, her defense of love, of the earth, the importance of humanity. But he tells her, even so, this is the way that men cheat the truth with splendid thoughts. You have all these wonderful ideas and dreams, but they are worth nothing. For how in the soiled heart of man could dwell the immaculate grandeur of thy dream-built God? Or who can see a face and form divine in the naked, two-legged worm thou callest man? O human face, put off mind-painted masks. The animal be, the worm that nature meant. Accept thy futile birth, thy narrow life. For truth is bare like stone and hard like death. Bare in the bareness, hard with truth's hardness, live. But Savitri replied to the dire god, yes, I am human, yet shall man by me, since in humanity waits his hour, the god, trample thee down to reach the immortal heights, transcending grief and pain and fate and death. Yes, my humanity is a mask of God. He dwells in me, the mover of my acts, turning the great wheel of his cosmic work. I am the living body of his light. I am the thinking instrument of his power. I incarnate wisdom in an earthly breast. I am his conquering and unslayable will. The formless spirit drew in me its shape. In me are the nameless and the secret name. Death from the incredulous darkness sent its cry. O priestess in imagination's house, persuade first nature's fixed immutable laws, and make the impossible thy daily work. How canst thou force to wed two eternal foes, irreconcilable in their embrace? They cancel the glory of their pure extremes. An unhappy wedlock maims their stunted force. How shall thy will make one the true and false? Where matter is all, their spirit is a dream. If all are the spirit, matter is a lie. And who was the liar who forged the universe? The real with the unreal cannot mate. He who would turn to God must leave the world. He who would live in the Spirit must give up life. He who has met the self renounces self. The voyagers of the million routes of mind, who have traveled through existence to its end, sages exploring the world ocean's vasts, have found extinction the sole harbour safe. Two only are the doors of man's escape: death of his body, matter's gate to peace; death of his soul, his last felicity. In me all take refuge, for I, death, am God. Which way are we reading? Yes.
For how in the soiled heart of man could dwell the immaculate grandeur of thy dream build God, or who can see a face and form divine in the naked two-legged form thou callest man.
Yes. So death replies to her, you speak of love as a great and powerful God. But in the heart of human beings, he says, the heart of man is soiled. It's so dirty, so polluted. No? How could that dream-built God, that God of love that you have built out of your dreams, how can that powerful, wonderful God of love that you have imagined, how can that live in the heart of human beings who are so imperfect, whose emotions are so mixed? Soiled, it means polluted. How in the soiled heart of man could dwell the immaculate grandeur of thy dream-built God? Immaculate means absolutely pure, no stain. You imagine that great, powerful, pure God of love. You build him up in your dreams, but how can he live in the human heart, which is so soiled, so impure, so dirty? And she had said that it's possible to see the divine in the human form, when we become aware of that God of love, we can see him inhabiting a human form. But he says, how is that possible? How can anybody see the face and form divine in a human form, in this naked, two-legged worm that you call man, that you call a human being? Human beings are just some kind of crawling, creeping things. And well, they happen to have 2 legs. But there's nothing divine or wonderful about them at all.
How cruel it is.
Yes. Is that where you stopped, Rosa? Yeah. Bhavana.
O human face, put off mind-painted masks, the animal beast, the worm that nature meant. Accept thy futile birth, thy narrow life.
Yes. He says, get rid of your illusions. You are a human face and the figure of a human being. Stop wearing these masks, pretending to be something else. You've made these fancy, beautiful masks. You've painted them in beautiful colors with your mind. But that's not the truth about human beings. No? Take off those masks. See human beings for what they really are, animals. Not even very dignified animals, just worms. No?
Shraddhavan, I want just tell long time ago in Delhi with Kirinbhai, he had a conference and I have question. I don't tell in Kirinbhai, I tell Shraddhavan, and a lot of Auroville laughing. I call it Shraddhavan, I see in him.
You could see the divine. Yes.
A lot of Auroville laughing, but I don't know, but it's very interesting.
Yes. So, in fact, it is true, and all the great sages are able to do that. They can see. There's a prayer which Sri Aurobindo gave to one of his disciples. No? In all things, let me see the divine. It is possible. No? Yes. But death tells her that's all just illusion. Put away all that. No? Be the animal, the worm that nature meant you to be. No? Accept this birth, you've been born into this world, but your birth is futile. It has no meaning, no significance, no use. Just accept that it's like that. Live your narrow life. Don't imagine or expect anything else. You'll read it? No?
For truth is bare like stone, and hard like the bare in the furnace, how is truth furnace big?
Yes. If you want to know what is real, what is true, truth is not painted, it's not ornamented. It is bare, like hard rock, and it is hard. Often we feel that truth is bare and hard, but still, when we can feel a little bit of truth, how wonderful that is, no? Even though it's bare and hard. Bare in the bareness. Stop all these illusions and imaginations. Live this hard truth. But she's going to reply to him.
But Savitri replied to the dead God, yes, I am human, yet shall man by me. Since in humanity waits is our God. Trample thee down to reach the immortal heights. Transcend pain, grief and pain and faith and death.
Yes. well, she agrees with him. She says, yes, I am human, but still, although I am human, through me, man will be able to overcome you, death. No? Because, she says, God is waiting in humanity. This morning I was explaining to somebody, we looked at some lines of Sri Aurobindo's together. Sri Aurobindo had written that this entire material universe is the manifestation of the Supreme Conscious Being. But first he hides himself in matter. And then we see emerging from matter that Supreme Conscious Being gradually reveals something of himself in the form of life, of living beings. And then he evolves further, or nature evolves further, and reveals more of that, the quality and powers of that conscious being in the form of mind. And as evolution goes further, he will reveal more of himself as spirit, as supermind. So that's what she means. God, all the divine powers are waiting within matter, within living things, and within us human beings to be able to express themselves fully.
But at the same time, the opposite also is and beauty is the ugly things are there.
Yeah, that was the next thing. We read 7 sentences. He said, then man is living in the dualities, in the contradictions. It's because we are not yet fully evolved. But we have to evolve as individual human beings. And these are limited individualities. And so we experience things as good and bad, hot and cold, true and false. But as we evolve further, as we grow beyond our egoistic limitations, then we can open up to the higher power, and then each one can become a conscious center of the divine unity, and can spread and radiate that divine truth and good and delight, he says. And that is how the divine life will come about, through evolution, more and more of the many becoming conscious centers of the divine oneness. So that's what she's implying here. In humanity, in all these conscious individuals, limited, subject to duality and death, God is just waiting his time to emerge and show himself. And when he does that, he's going to trample you down. The human beings will overcome death. They'll be able to reach the heights of immortality. They will be able to go beyond all the dualities, beyond grief and pain and fate and death. That is our destiny. Mila.
Yes, my humanity is a mask of God. He dwells in me, the mover of my acts, charming the great will of his cosmic work.
So Savitri can say this. Actually, we should all say and know this. My humanity is a mask of God. He dwells in me. He lives inside me. And it's the power of God that is moving, helping me to act and be. And through all of us, He is turning this great cosmic wheel, the wheel of his universal work. She's speaking personally as a representative of humanity. Yes. Yes. And she continues like that. You'll read, Ganga?
I am the living body of his light. I am the thinking instrument of his power. I incarnate wisdom in unearthly breath. I am his conquering and enslayable will. The formless spirit drew in me its shape. In me are the namelesses and the secret name.
Yes. So, of course, Savitri can say this in a special sense because she has become conscious of her divinity. But it is true of all of us, only we are not aware of it. So she says, I'm the living body of God's light, of his consciousness. I'm the thinking instrument of his power. Human beings are mental beings. We think. He uses our thoughts to express his power. Here I am. I'm in a human body. In this human body, I'm incarnating wisdom. I'm expressing the presence of wisdom in a human form, in a body. And she says, I am God's conquering and unslayable will. Especially she is representing the will of God, which is sure to conquer and which cannot be destroyed. So this is what she represents in this debate between love and death. The debate will go on for a long time, but finally we shall see that the Supreme Lord says, yes, you've spoken my will. Your words are my words. What you have asked for, I will do, because it is my will. But that's quite many pages on before we come to that. The formless spirit. Spirit, of course, is beyond form, beyond the world of matter. But that formless spirit has created this shape of me, Savitri. This shape of all of us. So in me, I am carrying the two aspects of the Supreme. The nameless, the one who is beyond all names and forms, but who is at the same time also personal. We can know him by his secret name. And both of those aspects, the personal and the impersonal, are in us.
No, the spirit and the soul.
What's the difference between spirit and soul?
Here is she
Speaks.
forms people in me.
Yes, yes,
But the soul.
yes,
How different.
yes. The word soul, Sri Aurobindo's written about it. Actually, we use it in many different senses. But basically, it's something individual. No, it's our individual divinity. spirit is not individualized. It's vast and formless and unlimited and eternal and infinite. But here she's saying that that spirit which is beyond form, beyond any limitation, it has drawn in me its shape out of its own substance. It has created individual beings with forms. Bom and Joel and Bhavan. The spirit has drawn itself a shape, and it's inhabiting, living in this shape. But none of these shapes would be alive if there weren't the spirit within it. The spirit, the soul is individualized, and although the soul is divine, although it is spirit, it also, as it in our appearances, it takes on different shapes and forms and characteristics. So in its expression, in its nature, we could say. Is it clear?
What is the secret name?
What is the secret name? It's the secret name of the Lord. And perhaps each of us calls him by different names. Those are the names for us that express the Lord. No? And when we know him fully, then we will know his secret name.
Death from the incredulous darkness sent its cry. O priestess in imagination's house, dissuade first nature's fixed immutable laws, and make the impossible thy daily work.
Yes. So she said that in me, through me, God is going to trample down death. And he says, well, before you try to do that, first you are going to have to change the laws of nature. The laws of nature, he says, are fixed. They are immutable. They can't be changed. You will have to be able to do the impossible every day in order to conquer me. No? You imagine that you can do that because you are a priestess. You worship imagination. But first, show me. No, he's going to tell her concretely, show me your power. First, you are going to have to be able to change the laws of nature if you want to overcome death. We also believe that the laws of nature are fixed and immutable and they can't be changed. But in other places in the poem, Sri Aurobindo says they are just habits and they will change. They will be changed. But for us they seem fixed and unchangeable, that we can't change the laws of physics. Now Sarojini, you can read. Yeah?
Who canst thou force to wed to internal force, increase
Irreconcilable.
Irreconcilable in that ignorance. Thy cancel the glory of that
Pure.
What extremes and unhappy what love means that staunch force.
Yes. He says what you're trying to do is to force two things which are enemies, two eternal enemies. You're trying to bring them together, to marry them and make them one. He says in the next sentence what they are. One is matter and the other is spirit. He says these things are completely irreconcilable. They are so opposite, there is no way to bring them together. That's what he says. He says if you try to bring matter and spirit together, they cancel each other out. They are so opposite. In their extremes, if we keep them separate, they may be glorious. There's a certain glory of matter and there's the glory of spirit. But if you bring them together, they cancel each other out. That's what he says. When you bring together two incompatible people, they have a very unhappy marriage, an unhappy wedlock. They can't live in harmony together, no? And neither of them can be fully what they should be themselves. So he says when you bring spirit and matter together, it's like that. Their force, for each of them, their individual force, their great characteristic, gets stunted. When something is stunted, it can't grow properly. A tree that has grown in a way that doesn't allow its roots and its branches to grow, it's stunted. Sometimes we see human beings who, through very difficult circumstances in their childhood, they are stunted in some way. They couldn't develop properly. Yes, please, Uday.
How shall we make one the true or false? Where matter is all, the spirit is a dream. If all are the spirit, matter is life. And who was the liar who forgot the universe?
Who forged the universe? Yes, thank you. We'll stop. Okay, you read the next line.
The real with the unreal cannot match.
Yes, okay. So you're trying to bring these two things together into a partnership. But how can you do that? If we think in terms of matter, spirit doesn't exist. If we think of spirit, if we experiencing things in terms of spirit, matter is an illusion. If all of us are spirit, then this material appearance that we have is a falsehood, it's a lie. And he says, and who was the liar who forged this universe? Who has created this universe? Forged, it means two things. To forge, somebody who works with metal. He will work the metal, different pieces, and bring together to make something. But we also use this verb to mean somebody who makes a pretense. We talk about forgers, people who make false money or false paintings. So all this universe is perhaps just a forgery. It's not real. What's real with a capital R, the real reality, cannot mate, it cannot come together with what is unreal. Sergei.
He who would turn to God must leave the world. He who would live in the Spirit must live out life. He who has made a self renounces a self.
So this is a kind of doctrine. It's even a spiritual doctrine, no? That he who would turn to God is going to have to give up the world. People who are very, very serious about finding God, they feel that they have to give up ordinary life in the world. They have to become sannyasis, or go and live in monasteries, or go and live in a cave in the Himalayas somewhere. Sri Aurobindo doesn't agree with that, but it's a long held and long believed idea, and it's something spontaneous in us. when we first begin to want to turn towards the soul, we have the feeling, oh, I have to give up all this other stuff. Sri Aurobindo tells us just the opposite. That we have to find the divine in the circumstances of daily life. No? But anyway, this is what death is saying. If you want to turn, would here it means wants to. Whoever wants to turn towards God, they have to leave the world. Whoever wants to live in the spirit must give up life. The two things are incompatible, he says. And when you have found the self, the one self of all, you will have to give up your individuality. You will have to cease to exist as an individual. Sri Aurobindo doesn't believe any of these things.
Shraddhavan?
Yes.
The last sentence, he who has met the self renounces self. This morning I was reading in Life Divine, and curious as I am, took the next pages and read about supramental. And if I understand well, it seems that Sri Aurobindo is saying, same for me, renounce if you will find the goddess in life, God in life, you have to renounce from yourself.
You have to renounce your ego. Or you can't do it unless you dissolve your ego. But for Sri Aurobindo, that doesn't mean losing your individuality. Because your ego is just an outward projection of your true, eternal individuality. So the self with the little s, that's just you and me. But behind it, there's the true self. So in order to find, or if when you find that true self, then you will lose the small, limited ego view of self. But then you will become your true self. Then you will become a conscious center of the divine oneness. I'd like to go to the end of his speech. So who is next? Joel.
The voyagers of the million boats of mind who have traveled through existence to its end, sages exploring the world's oceans vast, have found extinction, the soul airborne safe.
Yes. So those seekers, those travelers who have passed through all the many, many different ways of mind and who've come to the end of the road to the pure existence, those sages who've explored the whole world ocean, they have found, they've tried everything, they have found that the only safe harbor, the only safe place to rest is extinction. To lose themselves, to merge back into the origin. Nirvana, something like that. That's the only safe harbor, he says. And then he applies it to himself. Yes, Gangalakshmi.
A question about the world's oceans vast. World oceans is unconscious?
No, there are so many oceans in the world. Actually, there's some ancient traditional maps of all the oceans. But here it means the ocean of the material universe. the vastness of all this ocean that we are living in. And in that ocean, the only safe thing to do is to cease to exist. Lose yourself.
So this is not true. No? All the sages, they got nirvana and they came back to the humanity to raise the humanity.
Well, I'm not saying that what he says is true. This is what he's saying. But it is, in a way, convincing. It has been very convincing to many, many generations of spiritual seekers that extinction is the only thing. Sri Aurobindo says, if extinction is the only result, why would the Lord have made the world at all? He has made it for a reason. He's made it for His delight. He's made it for a purpose. So, but here, in a very eloquent way, he's speaking the very opposite of his own view through this mouth of death, in the way that it has been spoken many times in the history of humanity. So, but just see what he claims next. You read.
Two only are the doors of man escape. Death of his body matter great to peace. Death of his soul is lost felicity. In me all take refuge, for I, death, and God.
Yes. So these words are not difficult, no? There are only two doors for a human being to escape from himself and from the world. Two only. There are two doors. If we look from the point of view of matter, of the physical life, then death of the body. That way man can leave the world. But his last felicity, his last bliss, happiness, is when the soul dies, when everything gets dissolved and the individual ceases to exist. He says, I'm the last refuge of you leaving the material world and of leaving existence altogether. I, death, I'm the beginning and the end of everything. You come to me, then you will cease to exist. Then you will be happy. So next time we'll see how Savitri answers him.
For how in the soiled heart of man could dwell the immaculate grandeur of thy dream-built God? Or who can see a face and form divine in the naked two-legged worm thou callest man? O human face, put off mind-painted masks. The animal be, the worm that nature meant. Accept thy futile birth, thy narrow life. For truth is bare like stone, and hard like death. Bare in the bareness, hard with truth's hardness, live. But Savitri replied to the dire god, Yes, I am human. Yet shall man by me since in humanity waits his hour the God. Trample thee down to reach the immortal heights, transcending grief and pain and fate and death. Yes, my humanity is a mask of God. He dwells in me, the mover of my acts, turning the great wheel of his cosmic work. I am the living body of his light. I am the thinking instrument of his power. I incarnate wisdom in an earthly breast. I am his conquering and unslayable will. The formless spirit drew in me its shape. In me are the nameless and the secret name. Death from the incredulous darkness sent its cry. O priestess in imagination's house, persuade first nature's fixed immutable laws, and make the impossible thy daily work. How canst thou force to wed two eternal foes? Irreconcilable in their embrace, they cancel the glory of their pure extremes. An unhappy wedlock maims their stunted force. How shall thy will make one the true and false? Where matter is all, there spirit is a dream. If all are the spirit, matter is a lie. And who was the liar who forged the universe? The real with the unreal cannot mate. He who would turn to God must leave the world. He who would live in the Spirit must give up life. He who has met the Self renounces self. The voyagers of the million routes of mind, who have travelled through existence to its end, sages exploring the world ocean's vasts, have found extinction the sole harbour safe. Two only are the doors of man's escape: death of his body, matter's gate to peace; death of his soul, his last felicity. In me all take refuge, for I, death, am God.